Hello, everybody. My name is Dalit Halevi. I am the IBEN Senior Manager for Community Building. And today I'm really excited because we are launching the IBEN Insights podcast. And I have my whole team here with me. So I want to introduce them really quickly. I'm going to go in the way that my computer has you guys set up. So Bethan Howells, you've seen her lately. Bethan, would you like to introduce yourself really quickly?
Hi everyone, I'm Bethan Howells. I'm an IBEN Associate Manager on Community Building and I work with Delete and the other guys and I'm really excited that this is happening, the new podcast.
And Bethan is in charge of everything related to IBEN trainings. So it's huge projects that we're doing and trying to improve them. Sav, what about you?
Hi, I'm Sav. I manage the LinkedIn group, so you all have probably seen me on there. And I'm going to be helping with the promotional side of things with the podcast as well as post-production. So yeah, really excited about it.
And then we have Richard, which many of you have met in the backstage of our webinars.
You're muted, dear friend. Yes.
Sorry
A common
about that.
mistake.
Yes, the fun of the background logistics. I like to stay in the background, and
Yes.
normally you would hear or see or my influences and supporting the webinar logistics in the background.
And last but not least, we have Cam Kravitz, who is going to be our magnificent host for this podcast.
That's a wonderful segue to lead. I'm now trying to take everybody off of the spotlight. So thank you to all of the listeners for bearing with us in our first ever IBEN podcast. We're super excited to get this started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are listening from. This is the first ever IBEN Insights podcast. My name is Cam Kravitz. I'm going to be the host. You will see a wide variety of other IBEN voices on here, but for now, you're stuck with me. So a little bit about myself. I started with the IBEN team back in February of 2023. I was working as a temp at that time, working on a very specific project for authorization upskilling. I fell in love with the IB. I fell in love with IBEN and its mission, and I really saw this as a place for me to stay long term. And I was super excited when an opportunity opened up for me to stay, and I've been here ever since. When I first started permanently, I was allocating for workshops, I was sending certificates for training, and ever since we merged with the assessments team, ERT, I've been doing communications. And so if you've gotten an email from me or from the IBEN team in general, it came through my hands first. So we're super excited to get this podcast up and running. Why are we doing this podcast? We wanted to give another opportunity for you, the listener, to engage with IBEN in your IBEN roles when you're not actively serving as an IBEN. We thought, maybe there's that one time you can't come to a webinar. It never happens, of course. We all always are at every single webinar, but that one offshoot that you're not able to join, maybe this is an opportunity for you to get that sort of snapshot of what we discussed in a webinar. So we're super excited to get this up and going. The format of the podcast, as I've kind of previously alluded to, most of the time, our guests are going to be our wonderful webinar participants. It's a great opportunity for us to just delve deeper into the topics that we discuss. But of course, from time to time, we'll have other members of the IB and other members of the IBEN community on here as well, just kind of depending on the month. So this is a great first one to have. It was a super fascinating webinar that we just came out of with a wonderful panel that we're going to introduce and talk to a little bit more here today. So this is going to be a great sort of segue for me to ask you again, Delete, about the intentional IBEN, intentionally inviting. This was our webinar blurb from the Insider, just to kind of center ourselves as to where we are. Invitational education is a theory designed to create, maintain, and enhance environments so people can realize their potential and identify and change the forces that defeat and destroy potential. What does this mean for IBEN and the people we impact through our work in IBEN roles? How can we intentionally create environments that invite others to flourish? So, Delete, back over to you. You're the one who introduced this for us, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This comes from a book that I actually read a few years ago called Fundamentals of Invitational Education by William Perky and John Novak. And it's really interesting. It's meant, and it's about how you can really make people feel like they are invited into your school, like they are feeling welcomed through every experience in the school. And it's all about intentionality. How are you intentionally creating environments of optimism? How are you intentionally creating an environment that's respectful, that builds trust, that truly cares for people? And each piece of this is about how we read the room, how we read ourselves, and how we are reacting to how people behave, and how we create this environment where we're not just cool or charismatic, but we're actually intentionally thinking about it. And one of the quotes that I love from the book says that invitational education is an imaginative act of hope. And that really stuck with me because it's this idea that I can always hope that I'm building a better future, that I'm building a better environment with the people that are surrounding me. And like we said today in the webinar, it's this idea that every time I walk into a room, I want to make sure that I'm making the people in that room better. And how do I do that intentionally?
Yeah. Right, right. That was a great summary of the 2 hour long webinar, kind of summed up in a minute or so there. That was perfect, Delete. You know how I kind of thought about it when you were initially explaining it in the webinar. I kind of thought about it in layman's terms as the butterfly effect. Everything that we do, the actions that we take affects everybody around us. Maybe, you and I meet all the time. Maybe I'm having a bad day. My cat woke me up, at 4 a.m, and maybe I'm grumpy. But how do we, look at that? How does it affect our stakeholders, right? It's not you and me that it affects at the end of the day. It's the people that we're working for, the people that we serve, which is the IBEN community, sort of on a micro level, but also on a macro level, the IB and students and our schools kind of as a whole. So hopefully I'm kind of boiling that down into the correct way you're wishing to portray that, right, Delete? Maybe a little bit of an internet issue. Oh no. It lasted.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Great. Delete.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I will let you go because I know that you need a little bit of a rest, and I will start to ask somebody else. I also think your Wi-Fi is finally dying out after holding up so well during the webinar. So thank you so much. I will take you off the spotlight. My first question is actually gonna be for Diego, and I think it's gonna be interesting. Kind of with this first episode of the podcast, you talked about perceptual tradition, paying attention to how we are perceived, and the skills that we use to affect the outcome of our events. We represent the IB and we represent IBEN. So my tailored question for you, kind of off the cuff, how would you recommend that maybe I reflect on this first podcast experience? How should we reflect as a team on how this could serve the IBEN community as a whole?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody, our podcast listeners. I really think that this webinar helped us reflect a little bit on our affective skills and how we connect with people, how we build intentionality in the different roles that we have as we represent the IB in the world community. And one of the things that I think is really special for us is to think on our feet and to be creative and to look at all the different people that are engaged with us and begin to understand who they are, why they're here, begin to relate to that maybe the connection we all have with the IB mission and that purpose. And it really helps to sort of bring the temperature down a little bit because we're connected by a shared philosophy, a shared way of thinking. That when you think about how you specifically connect with others, we're there to provide the best education we can for our kids, but also the best training that we can for our teachers, but also to help and sustain, build learning communities that are inclusive and that really push each other to the limit a little bit around critical thinking, around self-management, around all of the approaches to learning, so to speak, sort of to bring IB curriculum to the core of this. So when I reflected on the different layers of today's webinar, it really speaks about intentionality and how you build a community to co-construct learning and validate every person in the room through their expertise. So I really think that people, as we get to know more people in our groups or teams or environments, we should capitalize on that expertise that people bring, because in the end, we're all united by shared values, and we should always open that door or window.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer. And, I think I consider myself as one of the lucky ones because every interaction that I've ever had with an IBEN has been a positive experience because we have those same shared values, right? Kind of on that macro level that I was discussing before. So I think you absolutely nailed that, and a good baseline for us to kind of reflect on today's first podcast. So thank you, Diego. And by the way, I did forget to introduce you. Diego currently serves as the associate head of schools at the French International School of Oregon. He has worked in both independent schools abroad and public schools in Southern California. He thrives on helping schools build systems through macro and micro thinking. I swear I did not read your introduction before I wrote that in the script, but wow, isn't that just perfect, right? So thank you, Diego, for answering that question, and thank you as well for being one of the panelists on the webinar. Super excited to have you. Yep. And so I will go ahead, just kind of steaming along here. For the listener, this is not how every podcast is going to go. We just have a great large panel here today, so we're just quick firing questions. So my next question is going to be for Rima, and I'll go ahead and give you the spotlight real quick and a quick introduction to make sure. I'm not actually sure if the spotlight is even actually working, but hopefully when we look at the recording, it will. So Rima Singh is an educator and school leader with over 25 years of experience across India and the UAE. She is the founder head of DPS International School, where she established a full IB continuum and led successful IB and CIS accreditations. I also thought it was interesting that you are a nutritionist. We might have to talk about that afterwards. I need a little bit of help with that these days as well. So anyways, you shared some great experiences in the webinar, and I hope, maybe you'll bring some more of us here in the podcast format as well. I think what stuck with me most was when you asked me to reflect on when I had intentionally sidelined others. So maybe my question will kind of roll you into that. What does it really mean to be intentionally inviting as an IBEN, and how is that different from just being nice?
Thank you, Cam. I think this question really sits at the heart of our work. We pride ourselves to be collegial and supportive and warm and nice, but being intentionally inviting goes much deeper. For me, niceness is a mood, and being intentionally inviting is a stance. Being nice is often immediate and situational. It can depend on your energy or mood of the day. And it can create a positive atmosphere, but does it always lead to growth? I'm not too sure about that. It can actually, sometimes niceness can help, make us hold back our hard conversations we might need to have in a visit or in a situation. But being intentionally inviting is a deliberate choice we make. It's a conscious choice we make, and it is grounded in the values of optimism, trust, respect, care, all that we heard in the webinar. So, which means that every interaction we have as an IBEN, the questions we ask, the way we listen, the way we frame our feedback, and how we even use silence, all these are sending messages about whether we are making the people feel valued, capable, and respected. For me, the real difference shows up in moments of pressure. When the visit is going well or the expectations of the IB practices are aligned, everything is fine. But when it is not happening, then what happens? It's like, are you being inviting during the rain? Are you just telling the school that, okay, you're not meeting the expectations? Of course, that's being polite and letting the school know that they need to do more. But how are you opening up dialogue with them? Are you asking them, what made you do this? What was your thinking behind this? What could you do differently? So just not being polite, but helping the school reflect, giving them opportunity, to think better, think, further. So that's very important. And also, as an IBEN, I've always like to remind myself that the school is not experiencing just me. They're experiencing the IB. So that's also very important to keep in mind. And that's a balance we hold as an IBEN. So we are there to invite growth. And so it's very important to be consistent. So niceness for me may not be consistent, but intentionally inviting is being consistent because it's a choice, it's a way of being. It shows up when we design for our workshops, when we plan for visits, and when we include the quieter voices. So again, as I said, it's very important that we keep that in mind, that we are giving everybody space to grow and reflect, and letting them know that they matter, their context matters, their efforts are valued, and also that they are capable of growth. So moving from just transactional interactions to transformational interactions, that's what the difference for me is between being nice and being intentionally inviting.
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic answer, Rima. Thank you for that. It kind of is interesting for me because I get to see the back end, and I get to see all of the times where an event goes wrong, right? Where maybe there was a conflict on a visit or a conflict in a workshop. And I see every single instance of that. And almost every time it's an instance of somebody that wasn't being nice. Without, divulging too much into information and violating privacy laws, you would just be surprised. So being nice is a baseline, participating in the golden rule, treating others the way you wish to be treated, can really go a long way, I think. And I think your experience kind of shows that as well. So thank you for kind of shedding a little bit more light on that. And hopefully in the next few webinars later today, you'll get to expand on that a little bit more. So kind of continuing on with our fast fire questions here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the spotlight for you, Rima, and I'm going to bring Jenny to the forefront. Let's see, make sure that that's all good. So a quick introduction of Jenny Kim. She began her journey with the IB in 2006, first as a DP teacher and then with the MYP. Currently, she is directing an IBEC program at a university in South Korea, teaching pre-service and in-service teachers while also actively engaging with IB educators as an IBEN member. She is one of our trainers for our ever-growing Korea project, which is one of my favorite projects that I've gotten to participate in while being with the IB, we only do things in English, French, and Spanish, but we've now brought Korean into the fold, and that's been like a really kind of interesting exercise for me. So hopefully this project continues to expand and grow. So thank you, Jenny, for training the first generation of Korean IBEN monolingually in Korean. But I'll go ahead and get into the question. What does it take to build trust with your IBEN stakeholders?
Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes resistance is a big factor in the lack of trust and lack of understanding where other people are coming from, their context. So sometimes, we're so fixed on our objective and we're so fixed on delivering what we want that we fail to acknowledge the concerns, the struggles that people have. So it's really important, I think, to begin by inviting people to share their concerns, to share their challenges, and find ways to work together to find different possibilities for the adoption or for solutions to their context. And when we initiate that, this can actually help build psychological safety. It will help build better engagement, which will become more meaningful. I think it's really important to validate the experiences that people come with and focus on the small practical steps that people can take rather than a full-on implementation. And I think that's one of the things that I'm learning here as Korea is adopting the IB programs in the public schools. It's such a big paradigm shift in the thinking of teachers that some of them feel like this is impossible or it's not going to work in a very high stakes testing society. But I think with a lot of encouragement, with a lot of, just listening and hearing and establishing that trust, it helps to build relationships where we can take small steps towards making that change as we co-construct solutions, co-construct meaning, co-construct the future together.
Mm-hmm. I really like that answer. You kind of highlighted one of my favorite parts of IBEN, which is how we all come from different backgrounds and we all have different shared experiences that kind of brought us to this exact moment, right? My last job before I joined IBEN was in politics and government, and everybody had the same story as how they ended up. You know, they did this and that, they met this and that person, and then they ended up here. I've never had that experience with an IBEN where they've had the exact same story as to how, you know, they ended up here today. Everybody has different philosophies and how they work, and I really do appreciate that sort of aspect of IBEN, and I think you've kind of summed that up really well. And with your experiences, especially with the Korea project, the sort of challenges that can arise, you know, from those different backgrounds. But I wish I did have more time to kind of indulge into that with you, because it is a really fascinating. This first podcast could probably be like an hour long if we really wanted it to, but I'll let you go for now. Jenny, thank you so much for answering my question, and hopefully we'll see more of you in the future as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That brings me to Ganesh. Let me go ahead and give Ganesh the introduction. Dr. Ganesh Balasubramanian, hopefully I did that one correct. Oh, beautiful. Lives in the south of England with his wife, Krishna, and their 12-year-old son, Gabriel, who plays the piano. The piano is the gateway drug to music. That's how I describe it. I played piano, Delite's son plays piano. We all play piano, right? A historic he works at the Charter House, which is a historic co-educational boarding school where he is the EE coordinator and teaches DP biology, also on Saturdays, which hopefully maybe I'll get to ask more about that sometime. He is also an established member of IBEN, working as a workshop leader, curriculum reviewer, IBX moderator, and more recently as a program leader. He reflects on his experience over the last 15 years. IBEN has given me a platform to serve. It has given me my purpose. I absolutely love that, Ganesh. So my question for you, I really liked your story about caring and being intentionally caring during your Greek workshop. You know, let's say I'm an examiner marking 100 exams, where I'm not able to put a name to a face. What is the value of caring in something like that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting angle that you're coming from, because we moved away from, let's say, a collaborative situation, which is what you would see in a workshop with everybody together, or in a classroom situation where everybody is working together, to where there is a separation between the examiner and the output that the child has produced. But we're looking at this with the context of caring. And that means, as I said in the webinar, there is a real responsibility within IBEN members, irrespective of the roles that you are doing, to the IBEN community and to our stakeholders. And in this case, it happens to be the child. And actually, for that child, the stakes are very, very high. They've done what they've done. But unlike in a workshop where there is a two-way conversation, you don't have that opportunity. You've done your best and you've left it to the universe. And in this case, the universe happens to be the IB examiner. So there is a real responsibility for the IB examiner to give it due time, due thought, and due care before they are able to make judgments on every single question that the student has attempted. They've prepared hard, they've done well, they hope for the best. So the stakes are quite high. So it is the onus is on us to now do our bit to show them that the value that they bring.
Right. I think you tackled that perfectly. You know, examiners are the biggest pool of IBEN, right? There are, 25,000 of them. The vast majority of our community are made up of examiners. So I'm glad that we were able to maybe tackle that in a more examiner-centric way. Maybe some people listening will take something out of that. I've never experienced an examiner that didn't care about marking. I mean, it's kind of the whole point, right? Like, if you don't care about students and you don't care about all of this preparation and hard work that they've done, you know, culminating in this exam, why are you doing it in the first place? I think you've summed it up perfectly. And I'll kind of let your words be the last note on that bit. So I won't monologue anymore. But thank you so much, Ganesh, for answering my question today and for being a part of our webinars the rest of the day. It's been great to have you.
Likewise. Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. So I will last bring up Shane, who was a late addition to today's panel in the podcast, which is no problem at all. We love having guests. And I have more questions anyway. So I have honestly way too many questions. I thought we were going to be going for longer, which, whatever. Anyways, Shane, nice to meet you. Shane Tastad is from Helsingborg, Sweden, where he has lived since 2010. Sweden, my favorite place to visit. I went there last summer. Beautiful. I want to go back as soon as possible. I'm kind of jealous of you, honestly. My international education career, Shane's that is, has included roles as a teacher, program coordinator, principal, counselor, and coach. Along the way, he became an IBEN member and have been fortunate to serve in a number of roles, which all of you know. It keeps you on your toes. I see that now in the description. Before moving to Sweden, he lived in Norway for 17 years, originally from Fonda, Iowa in the US, which I had to look up on a map while you were talking in the webinar. It appears Scandinavia is also a good fit. That is quite the move there, Shane. I'd love to get into that sometime as well. But my question for you today, let me pull my note back up. Oh boy, there we go. Okay, I'm going to ask you one of the questions from the breakout. I think that'd be kind of the best way to wrap it up here from the first breakout session. Which people are really important to you during an IBEN event, and in what way do they pull you forward?
Well, Cam, thanks for that. And first of all, you're welcome to Sweden anytime. Just give me a heads up, and you'll be welcome.
Perfect.
But Cam, thanks so much for the question. And one of the things, obviously, when you're in IBEN, you might have a number of roles, and the different people that you meet in the different roles have a different impact. But actually, regardless of whatever the event is or whatever the role is, the people who are closest to you, whether it be a team, whether it be someone that's in a school that you're visiting, they are the most important. And you have to sort of set yourself aside in that. Obviously, you're there prepared to do the work and do the job, but the people around you are the ones that you're going to draw on to sort of keep you moving in the right direction, keep pulling you forward. And, we've been talking a lot about this being intentional with our invitations and how we're working as IBEN. And I think it's just so important that by that, keeping in mind that intentionality, it gets people feeling welcome, it gets people feeling valued, and it gets people comfortable joining in. And so all of us together can create that environment. And that's what keeps us moving and pulled forward. And, I think if I were to think about some top tips for being intentionally invitational, that would be the first one. And know your why. And the why is to have those, have people feeling welcomed and valued and comfortable. The second one I would say would be to be invitational to yourself as well. You need to have a little bit of awareness about yourself. What do I need to feel good? How can I take care of myself in this? And then finally, connection before content. We know that content is going to come. We know that it's super important, but the connection that we can get by being invitational, by receiving invites from others. So we have to be open to receiving invites from others as well. I think those are the tips that I think would help us all in IBEN to be very intentionally invitational.
Yeah, and I think those are some great tips and honestly perfect for us to end on in our first podcast. I hope that anybody listening gets to go to one of the webinars that's happening today, because we are expanding on what Shane has kind of mentioned there in just that brief answer exponentially. We really get a lot deeper into it, but I think you kind of touch on how important it is to reflect on all of those aspects, especially as an IBEN. So I appreciate that perfect summary for all of the questions that I asked our panelists here in the podcast today, but that was really a great way to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Shane.
Pleasure, Cam.